Too little too late? I don't know, folks. San Diego Padres sweep the Texas Rangers, one of the best teams in all of baseball. What does it mean for the Padres going forward after some big performances from basically almost everybody and every key player on the team? Does this change the deadline outlook? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, July 31st. As always, I am your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with my baseball-related work at justbaseball.com, where I will be writing all sorts of stuff this week, as I do all the time. You can check that out. And also, at Javipeno, Javiipeno, for all my tweets about all bunch of sort of random things. And then you can go check out at LO_Padres for usually live updates for the games. Not gonna lie, wasn't that active this weekend. Birthday weekend, what can I say? A little bit focused on some other things. But don't worry, we're back at it this week, and especially this week with the deadline coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by me being happy for once. Kind of crazy, right? I don't understand what's going on. The Padres actually had a sweep of a series. That's right, they swept the Texas Rangers this weekend. Let's recap that and then talk a little bit about how it affects the deadline, because that's what really matters the most, and just whether or not it means that it should change the Padres' buying philosophy or selling philosophy, whatever. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about yesterday's game. The Padres, once again, and finally, this time, instead of just relying on... Look, Blake Snell has given us performances that have been excellent for like 2 months now. He's been amazing. He's the hottest pitcher in baseball. He's got the lowest ERA, basically, of anyone in baseball. He's been tremendous. And he was tremendous yet again. And I will say, I didn't even feel the need to do like a reverse jinx thing. One, because I don't want to get ratioed on Twitter right now, especially on my birthday. I didn't want to do that. But in this game, 5 strong innings for Blake Snell. He only allows 1 run, and it was a weird, like, dumb play by him, throwing the ball away at first base, allowing a run to score. That felt like kind of the, all right, here it is. This is what they've been doing all year. Don't worry. Hey, no, everybody don't panic. Don't panic. They've been doing this all year. They look good for 2 games, and then they can't finish it off. And that felt like a moment that was like, yep, same old Padres. With this time, you know, we find different ways to lose, and Blake Snell throwing away the ball to allow in a big run to score felt like it. But even still, 4 walks in this game, that wasn't great. But he struck out 9 and didn't give up any run that wasn't of his own error. So shouts to Blake Snell, he's very good. In fact, the only real bad thing that happened was Nick Martinez getting absolutely torched by his old team. 1 inning, and he wasn't able to get through it all that well and effectively. 2 earned runs on 3 hits. I've been asked what's going on with Nick Martinez. I don't know immediately. Have to do a deep dive on that probably at some point, because last year as a bullpen relief guy, his ERA dropped by like 2 points. Like, he was much more effective in the pen, and I'm wondering, you know, if you look at just the, again, surface level stats, batters seem to be hitting his cutter a lot more this year, and he seems to be relying more on his changeup, and that's been mostly effective. That's his deadliest pitch, but the cutter just doesn't seem to be working for him, and that seems they're batting like 300 against it, 365, I believe, at least above through, like, you know, they're slugging really high against it. You could check the Savant stats. While last year it was around like a 250, 270 mark, which was a little bit average, right? So he wasn't as bad with that pitch last year. That's the first thing that comes to mind, and in general, just not focused, maybe not making the right pitch selection, and getting hit up a lot. And against his old team, it felt almost poetic. But yeah, Martinez is just, every time it looks like he's getting back to regular, right? Hey, look, his starts before this, or I should say appearances before this, 1 inning, 3 strikeouts against Pittsburgh on July 25th, 1 inning, 2 strikeouts against Pittsburgh, 1 inning, no hit, 2 strikeouts against Texas on Friday. Or I'm sorry, hold on, give me a second. That was on Saturday. I don't get dates right sometimes. On Saturday, and then he gets lit up in this game and almost blows the lead entirely for the Padres, making it 4-3. Thankfully, they're able to get some run support in this game, mainly, I must say. First of all, sacrifice 5 from Xander Bogaerts, appreciated, although I would also like if you just got a hit for once when runners are on. But the catchers of the San Diego Padres, dare I say, the MVPs of the weekend. They're not actually the MVPs. I'd say that goes to the starting pitching, but I just think it's a really cool development that the Padres seem to actually be getting stuff from their catcher. Dare I say, as long as I've been covering this podcast, which is since 2020, that this is the most productive I've seen Padres catchers be, to be quite honest with you. You could say Jorge Alfaro. Don't get me wrong, he was a god. He was a god amongst men. That's why I'm not almost including him in this, because Jorge Alfaro, he had so much, like, more. He was more than a baseball player, Jorge Alfaro. He was a guardian, a watchful protector, I think, of all of us, our souls. So it's a little bit unfair to include him in this. Jorge Alfaro was super clutch for the Padres in 2022. And this year, Gary Sanchez, really good in this game. He hits 2 home runs for the Padres, kind of basically their main supplier of the night. Juan Soto gets a double in the bottom of the 4th for all those people who say he hasn't felt all that clutch this year, which is crazy to me. It's just not true. Is he hitting 400 with runners on? No. Is he hitting 300 with runners? No. Has he gotten, like, massively better with runners on? No. But very few players do. So again, I don't know why that was a little running bit. Could be the echo chamber, weird ecosystem of Twitter, but that's what I was gathering, is that people were, for some reason, a little bit disappointed with him. And then Tatis gets a single later on in the game. Error by the Rangers left fielder allows him to get to second, but that makes it 5-3, giving them a little bit of insurance. And it was needed because, once again, almost as if it was like the Padres are just begging people to not let them sweep them. Josh Hader gets into a little bit of trouble, allowing a hit and 2 walks. Thankfully, he works out of it, gets the strikeouts, gets the pop-up at the end to Tatis in right field. Man, that would have been an awful, awful time, and the ultimate, this is the Padres season, if Josh Hader had blown that game, right? Like, they need the sweep. They needed to beat a good team like this, and they did, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. The only question is whether or not it's too little too late. Not to use a cliche, but, even if something sounds trite, it can still be true, but it's just very, I don't know, I'm just not totally sold on this. I think that while the Padres, yes, people will talk about their run differential, which is currently, what is it, like 61? Are they like plus 60? They might be plus 60 after this weekend, because this weekend, they basically killed the Rangers this weekend. That's another thing. They didn't just barely beat the Rangers, and this wasn't like, for those who remember, a few weeks ago, when the Padres had beat the Rays, another one of the best teams in baseball. When they had beat the Rays, there was a lot of errors, there was weird things going on, bad defense by the Rays, like a lot of miscues that felt like, It felt like the Rays almost beat themselves in that series. The Padres just straight owned the Rangers, and maybe this is just because they seem to own Texas teams past few years, whether you look at their record against the Astros, whether you look at their record against the Rangers. I talked about last week the whole unwritten rules thing. Tatis hit that 3-0 thing against Texas, so maybe they just strangely own Texas. Maybe Edgy Preller's time there. He knows, the strategies that they use. I don't know. I don't know. But currently, the Padres have a plus 61 run differential, which is better than a whole lot of teams that have better records than them. It's better than the first place Orioles, better than the first place Twins. It's the same thing as the Astros. It is better than the Miami Marlins and the Phillies by a lot. It's better than the Brewers. It's a lot better than them. And I think it's fun. My little Cubbies, by the way, plus 60 run differential in the NL Central. They're an interesting team. They were my sleeper, and I should have stuck by them because they've been on fire lately. It's true. Go look at my episodes back in the day with Ryland Stiles, former host of Locked On Royals. I called it. I was like, that was my sleeper team of the year. Anyway, I don't know why I'm patting myself on the back. Back to the discussion at hand. The Padres should feel good about this series because it's a great team, and right before the deadline, there's been like mixed reporting on this. It feels like it does seem like Juan Soto getting traded is a big long shot, which makes sense. I totally understand that. Even if I do think you could get like highway robbery with that guy, if you were to trade him and just completely retool and you'd be back for next year, I get it. He's such an elite batter that you don't want to like give up a player like that necessarily. So I get it. Although, granted, it would be a lot easier if they hadn't extended as many players as they did, to be more optimistic about that. But just because I'm worried about roster flexibility, I'm worried about one is Seidler and company, who, if anybody wants to go check it out, a great article in the San Diego Union Tribune by Dennis Lin, or I'm sorry, The Athletic by Dennis Lin, kind of outlining that the Padres are, seem to be losing a little bit of money right now, and that they're not like panicking. Maybe they're quietly panicking, but part of that might need to be baked into their trade deadline philosophy, which is they've sold so many games this year. 86% of their games at home have been sellouts. They might just be continuing to buy based on the fact that people are showing up to ballparks, even if they are losing. And at the very minimum, They just want to put out a product that is getting people to pay tickets and buy popcorn, et cetera, et cetera. Almost similar to how I think the Angels might be approaching their deadline, because they have Shohei Ohtani, and him being on their team alone is such a draw, such a blockbuster draw. He's the Barbie Oppenheimer. He's the Barbenheimer of baseball right now. Like, everyone wants to go see Ohtani. So that might be an influence behind the Padres if they want to buy, right? Because of all the national television games that they get more now of, right? Like, just, again, the sellouts, all of that stuff might be a big part of it. Luxury tax stuff means that them trading away or them losing some of their guys, they might not get their draft picks comps. I think it's like a 4th round pick that they lose, or it's a top 10. I'm not an expert on the draft. I'd have to look that up. We'll talk about that later this week when Arm Layton of Just Baseball fame, big prospect guy, when he comes on, we'll talk about the draft and stuff. But again, really good performance by the Padres. Before we keep talking about it, though, I want to talk to you about something else that requires performances in a certain way, in a certain vein, I guess you could say. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $2,000. That's right, just $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's right, that's $200 you can spend on anything. You want to just bet the over-under? Go ahead. You want to bet on strikeouts? You want to bet on the first home run? You want to bet on total bases? They got you covered. And all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And plus, when you win, instantly. Don't worry about having to wait. You know what I mean? There's no like transference downtime or anything like that. This isn't like when your phone Wi-Fi isn't working and you're trying to download an app. Don't worry, you're getting it instantly. It's great. It's awesome. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And now, here's the kicker. Just for listening to this podcast, I give you a little treat. Sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get those $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. And we're back, everybody, here on the Locked On Padres podcast. I had to take a water break for a second. Look, I think that we're going to keep talking about this series. There's nothing that I think is also necessarily like massively impressive in these games that I want to talk about, other than the pitching and the catching. So we're going to talk about Saturday's game. Darvish, big start for him and one that he needed, lowering his ERA by like 0.3 of a point. Is that what it is? I think that's how you say it. Anyway, from 4.8 to 4.53 because of a dynamite performance. Again, against his former team. A lot of former team stuff going on right now, right? 6 innings, no earned runs, only 2 walks, and 9 Ks. Really impressive stuff from Darvish, who's been really bad this year. I mean, there's really no way to sugarcoat it. I'm a little bit surprised, to be quite honest with you, that he's been this bad. I thought that them inking him to that contract was a sign that at the very minimum, he's a guy that you could count on. And the fact that he's just been so hit or miss this year is really, really unfortunate. But he's old. He's 36. And this is something that happens sometimes. I will say that his like initial stats, when you look at his stuff, he's still striking out a decent amount of batters. He's not walking too many, although every now and then it gets a little bit out of hand, right? Like he had like, what was it? A 4-walk performance against Colorado. He had 3 last time against Pittsburgh. Like he can be a little bit weird there, but mostly he's been really, really good for his Padres tenure, I'd say overall. I think one of the problems is that this year, one of the things that helped him last year was while he wasn't striking out as many batters last year, his strikeout rate dipped by 4%. And that was a big dip because he'd been striking out like 30% of batters for multiple seasons. And including some of his best seasons back in Texas or back with, brief stints with the Dodgers and such, right? With the Cubs. That last year, one of the things that helped him was he wasn't issuing free passes anymore. And he was able to go deeper into games, which really helped him a lot. And this year, that's been a problem. He's giving a lot more free passes. And I don't really care about the strikeout rate as much because I think he was adjusting to his older age. I think he was figuring out, let me just locate my pitches properly and I'll be okay. This year, walk rate has spiked dramatically for Darvish, 4.8% last year to 8.2%. That is his highest since 2018. That's right, 2018. That weird bad season that he had for the Cubs. Like when he just completely forgot how to pitch for a year. That was the last time his walk rate was this high. It was 11.7% that year, which was absolutely asinine, by the way. I must say, I don't know what the heck happened to Darvish that year. That was such a weird thing that happened to Darvish. But again, He needs to be better. Hopefully he can be better down the line. I have confidence that like he can go on a run because he is still Yu Darvish, and I think that name value does carry a certain amount of weight to it. I think that it carries a certain amount of ease. It carries a certain amount of forgiveness to it. He was so electric last year that I have faith that he can at least be good if we're just talking about this season, which might end up being a season that the Padres are going to still buy, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Good start for him. Good start. And the bullpen is able to shut down the Rangers offense for the rest of the way. Hader getting the final inning. Robert Suarez coming in and doing good work. Same thing for Steven Wilson. Suarez going to be huge for this team. I'm really, really hopeful that he's going to bounce back. I know he got a little bit lit up in his kind of spring training starts so far, not getting that many strikeouts, not getting many swings and misses, but he's not getting lit up all that much. He's only allowed one hit so far since he's come back since July 21st. So, and he hasn't walked anybody either. Again, no strikeouts and whatnot. So that might be showing you that he's getting a little bit of help from defense and getting a lot of ground ball stuff going his way. But nothing disastrous so far. And for me, for a guy who's been injured for so long, I take that as an absolute win. So shouts to Robert Suarez. Shouts to the Padres starting pitching this weekend in general, and especially Yu Darvish. But the big story, my friend, of this game is the Hive. Luis Campusano. Big hit for him in the bottom of the second. That's the whole scoring summary of this game, at the bottom of the second, where the Padres absolutely unleashed their fury against the Rangers for 4 runs. But Luis Campusano gets an RBI. Same thing for Gary Sanchez, technically, with a walk, and then Ha-Seong Kim. Kind of the trinity we never expected, right? With Kim, Gary, and Campusano have kind of been the story for the Padres, dare I say. That's weird to say, right? Is that fair? I know Manny's been on fire this month, but like the story, because it's kind of happening, we're not expecting as much. Manny, I think everybody's kind of looking at as all right, it's about time. You know what I mean? But with these guys, it's like, this is great. And Ha-Seong Kim, by the way, I should have mentioned, I forgot to mention this before, my apologies, left Sunday's game with an injury, sliding to home plate after tagging up on the pop fly from Xander Bogaerts. Sliding to first base, he kind of like jammed his arm a little bit on the slide there. I haven't seen an update from what I've seen. I'm actually going to check right now in the middle of live recording this podcast. I haven't seen anything immediately, but he seems to be day-to-day, which is cool. He has a jammed right shoulder, according to Bob Melvin. He's still day-to-day. That's good, in my opinion, that it's not something crazy, and it would have been like a real true death blow if the Padres were to suffer a big injury to arguably who has been their overall best player this year. Nah, it's still probably like Soto, to be honest with you, but still, I mean, with the defense, with everything, we don't have to talk about Kim too much. We're probably going to do a full episode on him later this week, as I promised last week, but didn't get to. So hopefully that, goes well. But again, Padres offense, Padres catching was tremendous. Last thing I want to do is recap Friday's game, which absolutely went the Padres' way as well. Once again, starting pitching was amazing. Joe Musgrove, who has, while Blake Snell is getting all the headlines for good reasons, because of the deadline, because his strikeout rate and his ERA is minuscule, everything, Joe Musgrove has been excellent as well. Basically neck and neck with Snell in terms of like not allowing runs. The one thing Musgrove does better is he doesn't issue nearly as many free passes. He's great, man. He's such a delight to watch because, and this might be stereotyping a little bit, but with Musgrove's build, it's just a little bit surprising, his type of delivery, I think. I think his type of, the style of pitching that he is. He's not a guy that overpowers hitters. You know what I mean? That's never kind of been his thing. Fastball is not what works for him. In fact, that was kind of what was getting him killed early on in his career, is that his fastball wasn't really playing all that well. I'm not saying he couldn't be a Major League Baseball pitcher, but it wasn't ace level, right? And then he started to fine-tune his approach, and I think that's why he started garnering so much attention from other teams. It's just so impressive to me what he's been able to do. You know what I mean? And he doesn't walk any batters. This year, let's see here, 5.3% walk rate, basically in line with last year. Strikeout rate is about the same. It's not as crazy as his 2020 season when he struck out 33.1% of batters, and I think that's what made everyone turn their heads. But again, the fact that he has gone from a dude who looked like his four-seam fastball wasn't going to play to not only upgrading that pitch just a little bit, but also really improving his off-speed stuff is, I think, what happened for him. This year, fastball is the thing that he's throwing the most. Hasn't been his most used pitch in a while, but it's working for him. Batters are only hitting 211 against it, and he's putting away guys with that nasty curveball. That's his go. That's the big pitch right there. Curveball is his moneymaker, and it's awesome to see. So Musgrove, I literally have not been at all worried about him all year. All year. I was more worried about Snell at the beginning of the year, to be honest with you, because of his slow start. Musgrove is just money as a starting pitcher. So consistent. Always giving you the innings, man. If you're in a fantasy baseball league that does quality starts, this guy's an automatic quality start. Like, basically every single time. I mean, come on. So shouts to him. And he's got the big game dog in him badge, I think, dare I say. So shouts to Musgrove for this game. But wasn't the full story. Padres offense goes crazy. Juan Soto with a single in the bottom of the first. Manny Machado gets a sacrifice fly. Fernando Tatis Jr. waking up from his slump. Really nice to see. And I mentioned that he had the RBI in yesterday's game. Gets a home run in Friday night's game. He is just, and I had actually tweeted that he needs to like see more pitches. That's his only issue right now. I know I'm nitpicking. I'm just saying, one of the reasons he's in the slump is that he swings at basically everything. He's not drawing walks. He's not seeing enough pitches. He's always been a guy that can strike out a lot and can chase because he's so aggressive. He's such an aggressive player in literally every facet of his game, from running to defense to whatever. But he's not seeing as many pitches, and that's kind of the weakness with him so far. But maybe he's turning the corner. The positive spin is that because he's so aggressive, he's going to have those stretches where he's an absolute mammoth beast, titan, galactus, world-consuming monster of cosmic proportions when he's on the right track. So hopefully this is a sign that we're going to get a nice hot streak from Tatis upcoming. Manny Machado driving in a run as well. And Gary Sanchez hitting a double in this game as well, allowing Luis Campusano to move up as well. He doesn't get any hits in this game, Mr. Campy, but he does draw a walk, which I appreciated. So I found it really interesting that the Padres were using Campusano as their DH. And then Gary as catcher, or vice versa. I think that was really cool. And one of the interesting things for the Padres going forward is going to be whether or not they can acquire another DH at the deadline, because clearly they are down with using two catchers. That's not necessarily a good thing, by the way, that they're in a position where their catcher is their DH, because that's usually not where you're getting your offense from. But that's just because that just shows you how poor the Matt Carpenter experiment has gone. Someone I was worried about in the offseason, and I didn't know if it would be this bad, but this is why you can't bank on a dude who did well with the Yankees in the short porch and all that for such a small stretch that he was going to keep it up. He's a 160 hitter, 300 on base. It's not going to cut it. He's terrible. So I think that I still would like to see the Padres improve at DH, but I have to admit, I am loving the duo catcher thing going on right now for the Padres. It is fantastic. And before we talk a little bit more about that really quickly, I'm going to take a little bit of a water break. 1 second. All right, everybody, we're back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, finishing this all up and whatnot. We were talking about the catcher stuff. We're about to talk about deadline stuff. Look, Campusano, the Hive, it's so strong. It's so powerful. It's a beautiful thing, really. It's like watching a constellation. It's like watching the Aurora Borealis. Like, it's magical. It's fantasy. It's the stuff of fiction. It's the stuff of all the great stories we've heard growing up, really. I love seeing how he's been playing. I love the big hits for him. He unfortunately didn't. He had an opportunity to kind of put the game away on Sunday with the bases loaded. He's unable to do that, but still, I just like that he's finally getting a chance. And I like that even if they're not putting him behind the plate because maybe they're worried about his framing stuff, maybe they're worried about his relationship with some of his pitchers. I know that he's been a little bit inconsistent before. For some guys not liking how his catching style and his mechanics and whatnot, well, they're at least giving him at-bats as a DH. I really like that. I really like that they're not just sticking Matt Carpenter there because he's the one that's owed money or whatever. They're like, no, we're giving this kid a shot. And he's been pretty good. He's been okay. And I think that's important to note that Gary Sanchez has also been pretty okay. Now, again, I know people are going to look up, Javi, he only has a 96 WRC plus. He's still not walking enough. He's got a 205 average. I know. But first of all, he hit 2 home runs, which is really, really big. He hit 2 home runs for them yesterday. So now he's got, is that going to be 12? Hold on. I think that's going to be like 12 on the season for our boy Gary. Isn't that unbelievable? Gary Sanchez, while it has been all or nothing, the key thing is this. It is, number one, better than Austin Nola, and number two, it is good by catcher standards. For those who don't know, the kind of average stats for a Major League Baseball catcher, is basically what Gary Sanchez is doing right now, except not with the slugging. Gary Sanchez is slugging .436. Most catchers, .389. So don't get me wrong. I know that some people might look at this and say he's still not a great hitter. It's like, yes, but for a catcher, he has been. WRC plus on average for catchers this year, league wide, is 89, while Gary Sanchez is at 96. And this has not been updated yet with the 2 home runs. So I imagine he might have pushed that himself up to 100. So again, he's just better than average as a hitter, and his defense hasn't been costing the team near as much. Certainly not the best pitch framer. I wish we had a better pitch framer. But considering Austin Nola wasn't very good at that either, he was no Austin Hedges, right? And it's not like Austin Nola was throwing out all that many runners. So yes, Gary isn't an incredible defensive catcher. But what he hasn't done this year is had as many like passed balls, really dumb mistakes when you really need them. And he's had pitchers actually get better ever since Gary Sanchez got brought to the team. Blake Snell started going on his hot stretch. So he's at the minimum not killing them behind the plate when it comes to his defense. And that's huge because his offense is above average, right? 4 catchers. So that's really great. And then you have Campusano, who you're giving him some time behind the plate every now and then. And most importantly, giving him some reps at DH to at least get him to figure that out. Maybe behind the scenes, they're going to work with him. Maybe in spring training, they'll work with him to improve his framing metrics that are a little bit scary, albeit in a small sample size, that are a little bit scary. And I'm so all right with that. I think it's a great idea. I think it's great. Now, it is a product of circumstance where because they don't have a lot of depth and they don't have a better DH, that's why I think they're using Campusano so much. I just really appreciate it that I'm not logging onto this podcast and talking about how livid I am that they're giving Matt Carpenter and Taylor Colway, who just got optioned, by the way, or Batten or Brandon Dixon or whoever any players, instead of Campusano, who I think has a higher upside. So I love that they're finally giving the kid a chance. It's great. And I really do think that this catching tandem for the Padres is one of the nicer developments. And if they go on a run, it's going to be key. So shouts to them and shouts to the Padres this weekend. Now, in terms of the deadline, we had a lot of stuff happen this weekend. Max Scherzer got traded to the Rangers and Jordan Montgomery got traded to the Rangers. 2 players that were not on the Padres' radar whatsoever, but Carlos Santana was traded to the Milwaukee Brewers, a guy who kills us. And to be quite honest with you, I just wanted him that way we wouldn't face him ever again for the rest of the time, right? He actually hit a home run for the Brewers yesterday. Santana would have been a great grab, I think. In fact, I think that if all things were set and equal, Carlos Santana probably should be starting over Jake Cronenworth at this point. I love Jake, but his value isn't necessarily being seen over at first base right now. So, and Jake also needs to get better with hitting, high fastballs, by the way. His swing is just not cut out for that. So hopefully they can do that. I'm worried that people figured out Jake. But look, when it comes to the deadline, they just swept the Rangers, and they've got a series against the Colorado Rockies, the lowly Rockies, coming up. And I don't know if they're going to wait until the final hour to decide on whether or not they're sellers. I've been vocal about thinking that they should be selling, that they should get whatever they can off of Hader, off of Blake Snell. But I think that the team might be looking at the run differential right now. I think that they're going to be looking at the talent, their top-end talent, and they're going to say, if we can just go and get someone like a Jordan Hicks, who I know he just got traded to Toronto, but just get us like a solid reliever to replace, say, Luis Garcia, right? Like, figure out some of the finer edges, get yourself a decent DH. I wrote about this for justbaseball.com. There's not too many guys. Maybe you go and get Joey Meneses of the Nationals for basically nothing, right? He's old, but he hits pretty okay against lefties. He's an average hitter, 103 WRC plus against lefties. Maybe you can use that, right? So that's the only thing that I see this team doing, especially since it doesn't look like there's that many stars on the market. With Ohtani being taken off, with the Cubs announcing that they're not trading Cody Bellinger, which I think is actually really smart of them. I don't know why they should be trading him. I think that team has been on a hot streak. They have a plus 60 run differential, like I talked about, and they fixed a former MVP to being back to literally for like MVP quality players, Cody Bellinger. So shout out to him. And shout out to that Cubbies team that's really frisky and interesting. And I think that the front office is looking at the Cubs right now and saying they have the same type of team as us, except without the same level of top-end talent. Bellinger, obviously, he's great. Dansby Swanson, really good player. But then after that, it's like, hey, we got Manny, we got Soto, we got Tatis, we got Kim, we got Snell, we got Musgrove, at some point, like, our top-end talent should come through. And I think they are looking at that run differential. They're seeing how the Cubs, they've had a positive run differential over in the the NL Central for like all year, and it's never amounted to wins, and now it's starting to amount to wins. So I think Padres brass might be looking at the Cubs hot streak and saying, that's going to happen to us. We just need to hold steady. I don't hate that idea. I'm just worried about the idea that they lose Snell and Hader for nothing and miss the playoffs. And I think that the downside of that is really rough. The draft pick stuff, all of that stuff, because of the luxury tax, I think could be really, really unfortunate. It's not killer stuff. It is just draft picks. Draft picks are important, but they're not like, for a team that's been shown that they're willing to spend money, I don't think as crazy crucial as some people will make it out to be. But look, farm system looking all right. Ethan Salas already has an OPS over 1,000. There are things to be excited about for this Padres team. I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm trying not to be a joker for once. The hat is right over here, by the way. I've been retiring it for a while. I'll bring it back potentially after the deadline, but we've been playing better ever since I took it off, so maybe I'm going to keep it off. So I don't know fully what they're going to do this week. I just think, some people will bring up Candelario. I don't think that's an option because he plays third. We have a guy playing third right now for the Padres, and more importantly, he gets a lot of his value from his defense, Candelario. So I don't see that happening. There might be some decent players out there. I don't really know who's left. I think that this is just not going to be a big seller's market. I think that the Angels deciding to keep Ohtani was huge, and I think that really made everyone else kind of stand put. We have some other players, obviously, that are still going to be dealt. I think Candelario will be dealt. Justin Verlander sounds like he's going to be dealt too. And I'm curious to see how it all goes. But again, here's what I'll say. No matter what happens, if they decide to go all in, the only thing that I wouldn't like the Padres to do is to blow up their farm again. I think that that's the only thing that I'm 1,000,000% out on. I am like 68% out on them buying and not selling, right? If they buy, it just get us some stuff around the edges. That's all they need. Make sure we don't have that situation last week where Taylor Colway, no offense to the young lad, hope he has a good career, hope he figures some things out, gets better as a farm guy or a minor league player. I would love that. But a young player like him in a situation like that is really unfortunate against the Pirates, right? So they need to fix their depth. And don't get me wrong, I like the catching duo thing. I love the tandem they're doing right now, but you should have a little bit better of a hitter or a little bit more experience of a hitter. Have a little bit of a platoon, depending on what matchups you get come postseason, come the better teams, right? We're going to be facing the Dodgers after this Rockies series. Then we're going to be facing the Mariners. Not that scary, but then you have a bunch of games against the D-backs, right? That's going to be huge. That D-backs series is going to be enormous because the D-backs have been falling off a little bit. If people have been watching, we're only 4 games behind them now. And the D-backs run differential is only +3 compared to +61 for the Padres. So it's possible, although not all the time, that the Padres may overtake them. Same thing for the Giants to an extent. So hopefully they can beat the D-backs. They've also got a series between the Orioles thrown in there. So this is a huge stretch, obviously. But the question is whether or not they're going to be able to get some reinforcements at the deadline. I just don't want them blowing things up. Like I said, Salas, he's like 17 years old and is already lighting up. Even if it's A-ball, I don't care. That's insane. Especially for a catcher, that's insane. So don't trade those guys. They have 2 top 10 prospects, Jackson Merrill and Ethan Salas. If there is one thing that Preller deserves a lot of credit for, it's that he's a scout at heart. And I think that he's done a pretty good job when it comes to position player prospects. I'm curious to see how someone like Dylan Lesko develops and whatnot, but in terms of pitching, they've been pretty poor on that regard, which might be why they've been so inclined to sign or extend, in the case of Musgrove, in the case of Snell and Darvish and these guys, right? Like, maybe that's why, is because they don't have the trust to be able to put out some good farm guys in terms of pitching prospects, because you look at guys like Weathers, you look at guys like Adrian Morejon, they just haven't worked out, right? Even Mackenzie Gore, they traded him to the Nationals. He's an okay starter. He might get better, but he's not like lighting the world on fire. Although, again, I wouldn't mind having Mackenzie Gore. He's a pretty good player. But that's their big weakness. But in general, I mean, consider how many trades they've made. Preller does deserve credit for that. I really do think that. The fact that we have 2 top 10 prospects again, like, is pretty nuts. Like, it's just really, really nuts. So going forward, I'm curious to see what the Padres do. Is Jake Cronenworth someone they're going to try and move on from? I don't know. They might, though. I don't know who would take him, but $11 million isn't that bad as a salary in terms of AAV. The question is just the long-term commitment. I'm only saying this because I'm wondering if Jackson Merrill is going to be like the future second baseman, and that they go out and get a different first baseman in the offseason to go play first, whatever, and then they're like, okay, cool. now Jackson Merrill's going to come up. That's something that they're going to be working on in the future. So it is pretty grim future for the Padres in a lot of ways, but there's still some reasons for optimism. And I think that you should separate that from how they're performing right now. I think that at the minimum, you should just look at them as a team that, hey, there's still a lot of GMs and still a lot of managers that would kill to have this team, because you still got guys at the top of this lineup, at the top of this rotation that are, they can compete with anybody, right? So whatever happens, we're going to be covering it this week. I can't wait. I'm just hoping decent reliever. I like Alzole of the Cubs, but they seem to not be selling. But just any okay reliever, whoever, if you can bring him in and do some solid stuff. And by the way, remember, they've done actually pretty good stuff in terms of the bullpen. I know they haven't been a very clutch bullpen, and they falter a little bit, but past few years, no one thought Melancon was going to work out. Last year, no one thought Luis Garcia was going to work out. They were right just a year later. No one thought that we were going to be okay after Kirby Yates went down. They replaced him with Trevor Rosenthal. Robert Suarez got brought in. Nick Martinez last year. They've actually been okay at finding some good bullpen pieces. This is not some of those teams out there that their bullpens are just consistently awful every year. So shouts to the Pods, man. They deserve a little bit of credit for that. But again, I don't know fully what they're going to do at the deadline. It's been really mixed coverage. Honestly, by the time you guys are watching this episode, there's a good chance that a big trade happens. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't think that the Padres are in on the big names for once. I think they're just trying to get me an average batter. I would love that. Like Joey Meneses, like I said before. That's just an example of like average, hits okay against lefties. At least he's a hitter, and I don't have to watch Matt Carpenter anymore. And again, that would be cool. And again, the Campusano hive, strong as ever. Everybody, keep the faith. And with that all being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow me at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. Check out the YouTube where you can see my cool shirt. That's a little bit, it's like a lavender? Not lavender. It's like the blue from like, what's this color? It's like light blue. I don't know what this color is. Anyway, I'm getting too sidetracked. Check out the YouTube Locked On Padres, and then check out at @LO_Padres for the Twitter. Tomorrow's episode, probably going to be a deadline thing. We'll see what happens, though. I want to see what happens, and we'll, of course, recap the Rockies game, see what happens there. Both Rockies games, hopefully. The Rockies game on... Oh, no. I'm sorry. It'll just be one game. Huh. Yeah. Okay, I'm reading this wrong. They play 8:40. I was looking at Wednesday. We'll recap those games. Going to be doing a crossover with Millard and one with my buddy Aram Layton to talk prospects and the draft. Fun week ahead of you. As always, guys, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies, take care.